Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Justin Young, and he is Josh Tech, and this is the Shot Clock, the Georgia podcast here on the podcast network of HoopSeen.com and HoopSeen TV on YouTube. We appreciate you watching, and if you are, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below and help us out as we get ready for a big 2023 season with tons of videos coming your way. Josh Tech, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing really well, actually. I spent a lot of December doing national stuff. I was kind of hitting the road hard, trying to see a lot of guys that we don't, see a lot during the summertime. December's a really great time for that. But it felt really great to be back here in the state of Georgia over the weekend and kind of catching up on Peach State hoops, my backyard, my bread and butter.
I know. Home games, man. You got to love a home game, my friend.
I know. It was great.
Yeah, it's funny because the talent is so good in the state of Georgia that they do play in national events, so you see them. But I think I always found it when I'd come back home that it gave me a greater appreciation for, one, how good the talent really was in the state of Georgia and that we weren't really being super biased, but two, to give me a great parameter to like kind of where the bar is set nationally, like what the flavor of kind of like the classes, whether it's seniors or juniors or sophomores, et cetera, and to really kind of get an idea for the depth that Georgia has. So I think that's really important, particularly when you're a scout or when you're evaluating like a region. I think getting out of the area really does help you get better at your job for sure.
Yeah, it's great because I can kind of follow those Georgia teams and see, all right, how do they match up against some of the best players? That's why we develop such high opinions of some of these Georgia guys because they do go out, they play some of these hard schedules and they shine on those stages and stuff like that. So I think that's getting out, it was great to see them, but getting back was great because I got to see some really great games in great environments. Like on Friday, I went to go to a great region rivalry between Lovett and Pace. Those are two private schools here that both have talent, and that game was raucous. Like I thought I wasn't going to be able to get in because the parking lot was so full. I was just like driving around forever among.
Was it at Lovett or was it at Pace?
It was at Lovett, and so there's it was just a lot of it was just a really great environment. It felt nice, after going to some of these national events. You do get good environments there, but they're kind of big in bigger buildings with not like home crowd feel, right? This was like home crowd feel. It felt like, oh man, like basketball. It felt like basketball season, right? It was great.
Well, I think people are excited too that their teams are back, right? Like they finally get a chance to see a home game. Students are back on campus. I think the holidays are great, but I think everybody loves kind of getting back to normal too. Just January and basketball kind of go hand in hand. Football's kind of ran its course, and you're excited just to kind of get in there. So, but we know you went out to Grayson on Saturday for the New Year's Classic out there with the Rams. Is this a new event? Is this something they've been doing regularly now for the last couple of years?
Yeah, I believe it started last year. I remember in 2021, I believe I went to a New Year's event at Kell. But last year they had Grayson start hosting one, and it's quickly becoming one of the best, events on the Georgia calendar specifically. Like if you're a Georgia scout, a Georgia media person that covers basketball, or just a Georgia basketball fan, this is a really great event because you're going to get teams from all different kinds of levels playing against like competition, and you're really getting a really great depth of field in this event. I think it's going to keep getting better and better as one of the perennial staples on the calendar.
I think if you're an Atlanta area hoop head, you understand the value of a Cobb County versus Gwinnett County matchup. Really one of the best, I think, cross-city kind of rivalries that are going. It's been going on since the beginning of time, really, between these two counties. And we had a headliner. The main thing this year at the Grayson New Year's Classic was the host, Grayson Rams, taking on Kell. The game went to overtime, and it sounded to me like this was as good as you would hope the game would be. Break it down for us a little bit.
Yeah, Grayson and Kell, regardless of classification in Georgia, these are two of the 10 best teams. I don't think anybody would argue that. And this game lived up to that kind of expectation. It was really neck and neck. Obviously, it went into overtime. Grayson pulled it out 71-67. And what I loved about this event is that these teams could very well run it back next year and have the same result because there's a lot of juniors that starred for these, right? I think between the two teams, 2 seniors started total, PJ Johnson for Kell and Chad Moody for Grayson. The rest were juniors or below. So all these guys are going to be back, and we can reasonably have this game again next year and have it be the same kind of high level thing. In this one, Gicarri Harris and Anthony Alston were kind of the difference for Grayson. They kind of gave him the edge with 18 points each. And as you would expect, Peyton Marshall was a big time factor for Kell. He had 21. and he was a force down low in the paint.
Well, Grayson ended up winning it, right? In overtime, 67, not 87, 67, excuse me. And so you get that victory. And, one thing I love about Georgia basketball is, like, for a while there was I don't think it was duck season. I don't think people were, like, running away from competition. But what I've really enjoyed about these types of events is that we're pinning really high-level teams. We're having state tournament type of games that are happening in the regular season at a regular basis now, which is great. I mean, you can go into the playoffs now as long as you just make the bracket. If you're a top 4 team coming out of your region, it's just like the NCAA tournament. You just reset it and you're going back to normal, which I think adds to really one of the reasons why Georgia basketball is so good is because you got Goliath playing Goliath.
Yeah, and this one, I mean, both these teams have gone out of the state and played in national events.
Yeah.
Grayson was down in Florida, and they played an event down there. And Kell's been out west in your neck of the woods.
Yep.
They've been other places as well. So it's both these teams have gone out and tested themselves, and now they're coming back in state and still facing that top tier competition within the state.
Let's talk about Grayson for a second. We know that Gicarri Harris is a guy that you've liked quite a bit, even in travel season. I always played really well at our preview camps. And, of course, he's having a great season again for Grayson this year. What is it about his game that makes him so dynamic in these types of high-level situations?
Well, in this one specifically, he was the kind of guy that was just like, I kept saying to myself, just give the ball to Gicarri and just let him go get you a bucket. And that's kind of what they did. What was that?
So that's a sign of a good player.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I felt late in the game when it was back and forth, neck and neck. Yeah. I was kind of like, Gicarri's been your guy right now, like just let him rock a little bit. And he did that. He had 18 points. He kind of helped him out early too with a couple threes. And I like him. He's a bigger guard. He can kind of play both spots. He defends well. He just does a little bit of everything. Earlier in the season, I got to see him, and he pulled 10 rebounds in a game. So he does everything, right? So he's kind of like your do-everything kind of guard. And I think that's why high majors are starting to really kind of pick the ball up, and that recruitment's starting to trend in that direction.
Are you a guard guy or are you a big guy? Like what's your preferred type of player?
I think I'm a guard guy at the end of the day. I haven't shied away from the fact that I grew up, I got into basketball specifically because I was, I lived in Louisville, and that 2013 Russ Smith, Peyton Siva team was kind of like, what shaped my love of, a specific style of play, and kind of shaped kind of just how I view basketball totally. And that team was led by those two guards. So I think at the end of the day, I'm a guard guy.
Do you know that Russ played for my brother Kevin in the G League and scored 53 points for him? He was he was the first of I think 5 guys in a season that scored over 50 points for KY in a game.
Russ was also played in China and tried to get the Guinness Book of World Records to come out and have him set a record for the most points scored in a game or something like that. And only Russ Smith, only Russ Dickulus could do something like that.
Yeah, I also respect the crap out of it. Good on you, Russ. That's freaking awesome. Did he do it?
That's just he's an enigma.
Did he get it?
I think so. I can't remember. It was a couple of years ago. I followed the story at the time, but then it just kind of it was also so ridiculous that I just kind of forgot if he actually got it or not. I was just so wrapped up in the fact that he was actually trying to do it. But yeah, he's great.
Hey Siri, did Russ break the world record for points scored in China?
Okay. I found this on the web did Russ Smith break the world record for points scored in China?
I don't know.
Check it out.
I'll save it for later. I thought maybe I'd get a quick answer. So
yeah,
very special guest for the first time ever on the Shot Clock podcast.
Maybe we should get Russ Smith on here.
Well, yeah, I love it. We digressed a little bit. All right, let me pull it back in. Let me pull it back in a little bit.
Reel it back in.
Is there a player from that game that you're going to be buying stock in?
Yeah, Anthony Alston for Grayson. He's had and it wasn't just because of this game. I think it's been the totality of the season. But going back to the fall, even Grayson played in our HoopSeen Fall League. I got to see him a couple times there, and he was really good for them then. I went to one of their open gyms during, when coaches were starting to come out in October in the fall. I got to see him then. He was really good. And it's continued that this season. He's a really, shot-making wing for Grayson, 2024 junior. And I think this spring and summer, he's going to really have that kind of rise to, where D1s are going to start attracting, they're going to start flocking to him. And his recruitment's really going to start picking up over the spring and summer. I think he's had a really great year. And this game, 18 points, he had a bunch of shots, did kind of the Anthony Alston kind of thing. He really stepped up when the lights were brightest.
Let me pivot to Kell real quick. You told me before they came out here to the Tarkanian Classic that you thought they were a top 3, top 5 team potentially in Georgia's in their classification in Georgia, or was that just in general overall in Georgia?
I think no, that's in general overall.
In general, okay.
Yeah. In general.
Is there anyone at all that can stop or contain Peyton Marshall? Like I mean, he's such a force. He's so big and so undeniable.
He's Georgia's Zach Edey. Like Zach Edey's the National Player of the Year front runner at Purdue, and it's because who the hell are you going to put in front of him to stop him? Like, there's not really anyone that can do that. Like, for instance, Mount Vernon has Keith Williams, who's big, 6'8", really big. He's the one guy that would be like, yeah, he could probably stop him, and he had a hard time with him. So I don't think that there's really anyone in Georgia or, let alone for most of the country that can really stop Peyton Marshall. I think it's a matter of just doing your best to slow him down. And like I said, he had 21 in this one, and it just kind of, whenever he gets the ball around the basket, it's just move out of the way,
Well, if you keep him out of foul trouble, he's big in the clutch, and we saw them get a huge win in the first round against Liberty, who was really out of Las Vegas, one of the best teams that I've seen. Just a really terrific scholastic team, and Kell got the best of them down the home stretch because they didn't have anybody at all that could slow down the train that is Peyton Marshall, the Auburn commitment. Part of the byproduct of having a guy like that, you get good one-on-one situations for guys like Cannon Richards, and he's a guy that, it's funny. We've known each other now enough to know. That's why I asked. I was pretty sure you were a guard guy. You kind of know the player that I like. I like a junkyard dog. I don't mind an undersized big. And you said you're going to love Cannon Richards, and I did, and I really liked him a lot. And it sounds to me like his recruitment certainly reflects that. Some good mids, some low and high majors that are taking a peek. But for you, how would you describe his season in totality so far this year for the Longhorns?
Incredible. That's it. Every time I watch Cannon Richards in person, especially, I leave the gym either texting somebody or talking to another evaluator while we're walking out, being like, that is one of my favorite players to watch, not just in Georgia, but across the country. I think that he is going to be like when college coaches are out, like in full force this spring and summer, regardless if they offer him or not, he is going to be the favorite player for college coaches because he plays so hard and he doesn't have to score. Like he will, he does, he can, but it's his rebounding and it's just defensive effort around the rim. That's just what people are going to love. He plays so hard. He's so athletic. He gets rebounds that he has no business getting. And he did plenty of that again on Saturday against Grayson. In the first half, he had, got two fouls quickly. He had to sit for most of the first half. So he didn't really do a lot. But then in the second half, he ended up finishing with like 14 points and 7 rebounds. And it was just kind of like, for a while, it was like, oh, this is kind of Cannon Richards' down game. And then he ends up with 14 and 7. So I think that kind of goes to show how great of a season he's been having.
He reminds me of the type of players that we saw, no matter who the coach was at Murray State, like guys that Murray State would bring in and guys that even Casey Alexander's bringing in at Belmont and the types of schools that we see so often at our live period events. He reminds me of that type of player that makes an impact in like an Ohio Valley, that type of conference. Yeah. So I'm interested to see. And he's probably get recruited higher than that, obviously. But those are two very, very good teams that I think if you had a chance to go play for either one of those, you got to really strongly look at it. Speaking of winners and speaking of consistency, Eagles Landing, I think you have to throw into that category. They were there at the New Year's Classic at Grayson. What did they do well, and why are they so good?
Well, they just win. I mean, first of all, they're 16-0 now on the season. Yeah. And they picked up another really great win against Langston Hughes. And we know you and I think have had this discussion in the past that Rory Welsh at Langston Hughes is a hell of a coach. Yep. He gets his teams to play hard as hell all the time. And so that for Eagles Landing to pick up that win is impressive. But even more impressive is that they have 12 of their 16 wins have come by double digits, and they got another one by 16 points again on Saturday. And in that one, Mercer's signee, David Thomas, had 28 points, and he's kind of been driving the ship throughout the entire season. But that team's really built on toughness. It's kind of what I always describe as South Side toughness. The South Side of Atlanta produces some of the toughest players, and Eagles Landing's and it's a shining example of that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I love Eagles Landing. I love how hard they compete. If somebody that's watching this pod right now, we appreciate it. And if you know the answer, let me know. Hit us up on Twitter or shoot me a text or Josh a text or a DM or whatever. Has David Thomas scored over 2,000 points, or will he be on track to do that in high school? I bet he's probably pretty close. A 4-year starter for a program like Eagles, maybe even more than that. Maybe he already has.
He'd have to be close if he's not there already. Like I imagine that one of us would have seen that already. So I don't know if he's like right on the door of scoring that. But they're going to play deep into the playoffs, and they are in the same classification as Kell. So I'm really hoping that we get that as the 5A championship in Macon, because I think that'd be a phenomenal game. And the further they get into the playoffs, the closer David Thomas will be able to get to that 2,000 points. You know
what's crazy, bro, is that David Thomas has been playing with us literally, I think, since he was a 6th grader at the Georgia Cup. I think maybe 7th grade. I don't know. He's been playing with us for a long time. So, I mean, I know that I've probably seen him score 2,000 points.
Yeah.
It's travel or scholastic ball. No question about it. So let's pivot. Let's kind of go through some talking points that you have here on our notes for the show from the New Year's Classic at Grayson. Jacob Wilkins, man. That's a guy that we're updating our rankings now nationally. We've had a lot of conversations back and forth offline about guys that can rise. And Jacob Wilkins, when we're talking about Georgia's, upcoming class in 25, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That he's a player that we talk about pretty regularly. Is he continually stacking up those good days?
Yep. He did it again on Saturday. He had, this was a tame Jacob Wilkins game from what I've seen earlier in the season. Earlier in the season, he was routinely flirting with triple doubles. This one, he had, and this is quote unquote tame game. He had 15 points, hit like 3 threes. He's just kind of playing a really complete game. And the fact that he's shooting the ball as well as he is for being, 6'7" wing at, 2025 class is just really impressive. I think he's just going to keep rising and keep, forcing himself into that, conversation for the #1 overall player in Georgia and a top, 30, top 50 player nationally with all these games, this resume he's building up.
It's always interesting to me when I look back at my career, when I think about guys, when they really do make the jump, right, at a more national level, at a more macro level, it's always in this period between January and like May is where they really start to like, okay, we're going to take it to the moon now. Okay. And like as a sophomore, the confidence is there. You're starting to kind of become, comfortable in your body that's probably grown like, all these different directions in the last, 18, 12, 24 months. So I'm interested to see like what he does. What does he do in the postseason and region tournament time? What does he do in state tournament time? And again, with the travel season coming up right around the corner, I'll be interested to see what Jacob Wilkins does. Speaking of travel season, by the way, if you're a travel team coach, director, team mom, whomever it is, make sure you put HoopSeen.com/favorites on your favorites page. Or what did I say? HoopSeen.com/events. There we go. /events, not favorites. Put events on your favorites. There we go. I probably screwed it. I butchered this. Whatever. Make sure you do that. And then we got HoopSeen tip-off coming up in March, which is a great event that you're going to want to start the season off with. And we got our Jam series. We're going to be in Carolina, Alabama, Atlanta. We've got a terrific event down in Florida, the Conrad Foss Memorial, coming up to really start our season off as well down in the Tampa area. So we have a ton of options.
Be in Louisville, Kentucky.
We do. We also have Louisville coming up as well for Grassroots Showcase for sure. So make sure you head over to hoopseen.com/events and check out our schedule for 2023. We got you covered for every level of basketball there is. So let's keep it moving. Let's talk about some quick hitters. Hampton-Sydney's got 3 players from Georgia that have signed in their 2023 class. One of their signings played really well over the weekend. Who was it?
Alex Cannon out of Walnut Grove. Hampton-Sydney did a really great job at recruiting Georgia. I really like their class. They have a lot of guys who I was really high on in camps or in travel season or whatever. And so I thought they did a really great job. And, 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" kind of forward, Alex Cannon for Walnut Grove had a near triple-double to open up the day at Grayson. So he kind of set the tone for what would be a really great day of basketball. He had 13 rebounds, 11 blocks. That was what really impressed me. He had like 6 blocks in the first half. He had maybe 5 in the first quarter. He was really just like swatting everything. He was like Dikembe Mutombo out there. He had 8 points to go along with that. But I really loved just his impact on the game without scoring. I don't even know if he had a point going into halftime. It was just all rebounds and blocks at that point in time. And then it kind of came on. But I really love that he was able to impact the game without scoring.
Greenforest, and McDonough They played each other. They played against each other.
Yeah, they had a really great game. Isaiah Lloyd for Greenforest hit the shot that gave them the win. But these are two state title favorites in their respective classifications. Greenforest in A Division I. Sorry, they changed the name of that region, so I kind of get confused on it. They're in A Division I or A Division II. I can't remember. I get those mixed up. But then McDonough in 4A. Both these teams are fantastic. Greenforest has been playing everybody, and they've taken some losses, but they've also picked up some big time wins. They have those two trees and Guy Chol and DK Manuel. They have a bunch of really good guards, Isaiah Lloyd being one of them who hit the shot to win the game. And then McDonough is, we talked about Eagles Landing South Side toughness. McDonough is exactly what they are. They play all guards, and they are so tenacious. They are so tough. Avante Nichols was fantastic against Greenforest. Against those 2 7-footers, he was soaring up and pulling rebounds. He can't be much more than 6'3", but he was flying up above the trees with his athleticism and pulling rebounds. He was just so tough. And then Davion Thomas was hitting tough shots all game long. I think that team's really fun to watch. And I think they are over Pace, over Lovett. I think they are the 4A favorite.
Davion Thomas, a lot like David Thomas, is a guy that's been starting, I think maybe a 4-year starter as well for McDonough. Been a pretty good for sure throughout his career. South Gwinnett, they pick up another win. What's working well for them right now?
Kind of like I just talked about with McDonough, they have a lot of guards who can kind of go get you a bucket. They have a lot of guys who can take over in specific games. And they picked up a really nice win. They were playing without one of their best players, Ansar Osman, who's, a wing actually. He's a, 6'5" shooter. But they picked up the win because of 20 points behind Justin Redmond. And they play in a really tough region. I almost said conference. It's the college basketball in me. They play in a really tough region. And I think that team's going to be really feisty against teams like Newton, against teams like Grayson. They might not win those games, but they're going to give those teams a scare. This team's really had a really great season. I think they're going to be a tough out come playoff time.
As we wrap things up here on the shot clock with Josh Tech, Milton has probably logged more miles than maybe any Scholastic team there is in the country. Literally, they came out here to Phoenix, they went on to Hawaii, and they flew all the way back to Metro Atlanta, and then they would travel all the way out to Grayson, which you would argue for some people is like going to Hawaii.
For me, that's like going to China.
What was it about Milton that stood out to you at this event?
Yeah, I mean they just keep winning, right? Like this was kind of a team that we were uncertain of. They lost Bruce Thornton, they lost Cannon Carlisle, so we were kind of unsure of what they would be. Sure. But they've had a really great season behind, their sophomore backcourt's been great. But I also think that their unsigned seniors in Seth Fitzgerald and Devin Rush have been awesome. Both those guys scored more than 20 plus in their win on Saturday. And I think those guys should be getting some college looks. They could be, those late signees, and I think they really should be getting some looks sooner than later.
Yeah, Seth Fitzgerald was really good out here in their win. Josh Dixon played really, really well. But Seth Fitzgerald kind of glued it all together, really good on the glass. And he's played so many different roles for the Eagles over the course of his high school career. It's been fun to see his versatility kind of shine through. Josh, as we mentioned before, man, we got a lot of work coming up this week. We got tons of new stuff. We got some rankings updates in the state of Georgia, nationally. We got some more, coverage. I'm finally going to get into my queue. I've got probably now, I'm not kidding, probably 30 plus games that I got to watch, that I got to get up early for and get some eyeballs on some film, get caught up on all the action. For you, like what's on tap? You going out to anything big coming up this week?
This week, it's MLK week in Georgia. This weekend, I'll probably be bouncing around at different events. I probably won't be at one specific event for the entire day because there's 3 or 4 events, or maybe even 5 going around. So what I'll probably do is at some point, maybe tomorrow on Monday, is sit down and kind of pick and choose my games and kind of bounce around all over the state. So I think it's gonna be a hectic weekend for me.
Yeah, no question. Well, we appreciate everybody watching all the way through. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video. Subscribe to our channel. Help us out. We're going to be adding quite a bit of stuff. We're going to use this quite often throughout the playoffs. And, of course, as we get into the travel season at HoopSeen.com/events. There we go. I got it right. So I'm doing something good as we wrap things up. For Josh Tech, I'm Justin Young. We appreciate you watching the Shot Clock right here on HoopSeen TV. And we'll see you next time on the podcast.